I wonder, can Europe defend Ukraine on its own?
The answer right now is no. There's been massive divestment in Europe's defense industrial base for decades. European countries, for the most part, with a few exceptions, have ended conscription, for example, which many of them had for decades after the end of the Second World War. Europe cannot produce or ramp up production of either the basic needs of war, like ammunition, tanks, light armored vehicles, nor the highly advanced, exquisite weapon systems that, of course, the US produces so extremely well, but on very long timelines. And so we're looking at a major lag in capacity and a major lag in resources in terms of what Europe would actually need to do to defend Ukraine now and what it can do. So the political will, I think, is starting to grow, but there is just a basic question of how fast can you build ammunition factories? How quickly can you buy equipment? We know in our own defense industrial base, we have identified some key and quite profound problems in our ability to deliver to our allies, resupply allies. We are struggling to be able to do those things in the United States, and our companies have to rethink their structure and how they're working. But, it's no longer possible to have a 20-year or more timeline for producing a fighter jet or another exquisite weapon. I think we really have to start rethinking the structure of defense industrial base production. And Europe right now cannot go at it alone. That's very, very clear.
And I would imagine that situation is complicated by the fact that there seems to be at least some disunity among the member states of Europe. Now, I wonder if you can expound on that.
Well, of course, in the last 3 years since Russia's full-scale invasion, but even before that, we've seen, I think, a restructuring within Europe where we have the states of the Nords, the Balts, the eastern flank of NATO going down to Bulgaria and Romania, being very keenly aware of the problem, meaning the potential threat that they would face from Russian aggression if it goes beyond Ukraine. So you have countries like Poland now investing 5% of GDP into defense spending. The US is about 3.5% of GDP, and that's been actually declining over time. It looks like might decline again. And other countries like Lithuania, they're small countries, but they're also investing at that same level. And then the further west you go, or even south, countries like Italy, huge economic powers at the European level, but they're not even meeting their 2%, which is the NATO threshold, of course. So we see a huge discrepancy, I think, between the countries of the crescent, as I call them, which is UK, the Nords, Balts, all the way down to the Black Sea, and the rest of Europe. But we have a real vacuum, and I think a real lack of investment, a real, I think, lack of just urgency, frankly, because Europe had opportunities to rebuild its defense industrial infrastructure now for a significant amount of time, and they haven't done it. And now everyone is panicking because it looks like the US may not be the backstop anymore. And it's going to take a long time for them to get there in the places where they haven't invested as much as countries like Poland and the others I mentioned.
If Europe is able to muster the political will, as you put it, to raise its defense spending, I would think that over the longer term, or even over the medium term, it could be pretty compelling, given that the European economy is 10 times that of Russia.
The money is there. There's no question about that. At the last leader summit that France hosted, the conversations began about where is the money going to come from. One obvious place that should have been done a while ago is, of course, to remove these very strict debt and borrowing ceilings that EU member states impose on themselves. So Germany, again, largest economy in Europe still, is struggling, but they can borrow money beyond a very, very low percentage. The US, we do a lot with borrowed money. A lot of other countries do. If you unleash just the ability to get credit to invest in defense, that would be a sea change. That's one thing. I think the second thing the European leaders could have done is, of course, use the frozen Russian assets, around 300 billion or so. They're just sitting as cash deposits now, making no money in various banks across Europe primarily. And they could have used that funding now to either provide weapons to Ukraine, economic assistance. Really, it's an open question there. But there's a real reality here where I think European countries, no matter which direction they go in now, have to find the short and medium term opportunities for defense investment. In my view, there's no better place to look than Ukraine.